Alright, so today I want to make a video updating everyone on the new cases as usual, as well as get into some other important stuff. We had one or two big stories come out yesterday, so I want to talk about that, so stay tuned for that. But first things first here, Canada's up to 21,226 cases with 531 dead. Again, our death rate's slowly ticking up, but again, it's not something to be super concerned about right now. But I mean, we're up to about a little over 2.5% now, rough just off the top of my head guessing. We hovered around 1% for the first 2 or 3 weeks of this. Now we're slowly ticking up. Same goes for Alberta. Alberta is looking like they're a little over 2% as well. Alberta had just 28 new cases yesterday, so again, Alberta is actually looking very good. We've been under 50 cases for 3 days in a row now. And like I say, my prediction has been for about a week or so now that again we're gonna look back at this and be like, we went too far. The solution is worse than the cure, basically, as the saying goes. And for the first couple weeks of this, I understood. Looking back on it, and again, we're still not. I mean, it could get worse too. I may be wrong about this, but at this point, I think it would have been a good idea to shut things down for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Take that time to stock up on masks, to stock up on medical supplies, um, that kind of stuff. Send people back to work again for the people that still have jobs, because like I mentioned, a lot of people aren't going to have jobs when this is over. Like a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get my CERB, whatever it is, because you got to pay taxes on it, 1,500 to probably 1,800 depending on what your rate is. Maybe you get the whole thing if you're a student or you're just working part-time. Um, but again, keep that in mind for people that have got that or going to get it. You got to pay taxes on that, so don't go spend it all and then next year, tax time, all of a sudden you owe 1,000 or 2,000 bucks to the government. So keep an eye out for that. But again, when people they think they're going to be going back to work, a lot of these jobs aren't going to exist because a lot of these companies, although the government hasn't done anything to help them from what I've heard so far. I know in the States they've already passed spending bills, which again, I'm not big on these spending bills, but I mean, at least even most conservatives agree with it. I don't agree with it. I think some of these businesses that were barely scraping by should go defunct, because again, they're businesses that aren't really providing much value. That money should be taken and reinvested somewhere to where people can make money, to where there'll be more valuable jobs. Again, it's this economic principle that people just don't understand, that the seen versus the unseen. The overwhelming majority of people just see the seen. You have all these lefties, all these healthcare jobs. Oh, we lost all these jobs, but what they don't see is that money being reinvested, and or that money being saved, and in the long run we're actually a lot better off. But again, people just don't understand that kind of stuff. They're so short-sighted. They're so dumbed down, for lack of a better way of saying it. That again, they just don't understand that kind of stuff. And basically, to bring it full circle here, like I said, I think we're going to regret it. And I mean, there's another thing to get to here, and I'll talk more about this when I get to that. This is from Ezra Levant. He goes on to say, disinformation from Trudeau's CBC state broadcaster. You have to go 30 paragraphs into the story to read this. Police in Canada have reported a small number of hate crimes linked to the pandemic. None of the police forces reported this have linked them to far-right movements. And again, CBC puts out this story saying far-right groups across North America are seeking to take advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic by spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories online. Again, like most leftist things that they talk about, it's just them projecting. They're the ones that want to take advantage of this pandemic by spouting all their talking points. They're going to use this as, again, they're already using this as an advantage to crack down on some of our civil liberties. They already want to. My guess is that when a lot of people don't go back to work and realize that their jobs don't exist anymore, I think they'll use it as an excuse to implement they could. I'm not saying I think they will for sure. I think that they could, and it wouldn't surprise me if they use this as an excuse to implement a UBI, um, at the very least a temporary UBI, which will turn out to be a permanent UBI. But again, this is just them projecting. And again, I don't, I mean, I do understand why they talk about it, but where is this fear of far right? I mean, people twist that into me supporting far right groups, but where is this fear of far right groups coming from? Like, can any, if you go poll 100 of these people, 1,000 of these people that are worried about far right groups, do you think that they that they could name one far right group off the top of their head? Do you think that they could name one someone who's actually on the far right off the top of their head? I would guess maybe 1-2% of those people would, which just means that they're not a problem whatsoever. And it's also just to cover number one, I mentioned it. It's just them projecting, right? Like they want to take advantage to spread their propaganda, their conspiracy theories. The CBC is has pumped the World Health Organization's tires when they've touted conspiracy theories. Like again, they don't care about that. As long as it's a globalist, leftist organization, they can spread all the conspiracy theories they want. Um, but anyway, again, the thing we really should be worried about is all these far left groups. Again, college professors more likely to be communist than conservative. Again, you heard that right. More likely to be communist than conservative. In the arts, studies have showed that 20-25% of professors are communists. But does the left care about that? The far right is responsible for what, a tenth of the deaths in the 20th century than the far left? But yet you're telling me we should be more worried about the far right again. Such a backwards double think, makes absolutely no sense, their argument. And again, their only excuse is that they make up this narrative that the far right is this big issue. They pump it up, they make it seem like way big of an issue than it actually is. And then what they do is that they take anybody that dissents, and you see this on YouTube. You have like Ben Shapiro and guys that are like Jewish people that they claim are far right Nazis. Again, like such backwards think, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But anyway, this is from Kian Bexley. He goes on to say, not good. This means Ottawa can seize ventilators from Alberta, which has had the most aggressive procurement in Canada, to send them to basically the Ontarios and Quebecs of the world. And basically, federal government consulting provinces about triggering Emergencies Act, which basically means they can take medical supplies and other things. And this isn't a massive story, but again, it just goes to show that, you know, are these people going to be like, hey, Alberta, you did a great job. Jason Kenney, great job. No, they're still going to, tout this BS about how Jason Kenney is such a terrible premier and all this crap, but yet his province is the one that's the best off right now. Again, like, I just can't stand that about the left. And that's something, the thing about the left is that no matter what happens, they blame the free market, they blame the right. The free market does good, it's the free market's fault. If socialism fails, it's the free market's fault. Everything's the free market's fault with them. And again, I just can't stand it. Um, this is the big story I wanted to talk about here. Justin Trudeau came out and said no return to normality until the virus vaccine is available, he says. And again, I don't know, like, does he not understand that it takes upwards of a year, year and a half to come up with a vaccine that actually can go through the proper testing and all that stuff? Like, is he saying that we might have to wait till next December to go back to quote unquote normality? Like, again, I don't want to read too much into this here, but to me, it doesn't make any sense. Like, that this is definitely an example of the cure being worse than the disease. Or like, sorry, the disease being worse than the cure, whatever you want to call it. But um, I don't really understand this whole theory, this whole not theory, but this whole thought that we have to wait for a vaccine, because number one, we don't know if they rush a vaccine through, then we don't know whether or not it'll be effective. It may even be worse than not taking the vaccine. And if we wait, well, then we're gonna have to wait a year. We're gonna have to wait till next November at the very least, upwards of next year at this time, to get a vaccine. The government can't afford to pay people $2,000 a month for that amount of time. We'll have hyperinflation. We'll be, like these countries where you got to bring a wheelbarrow full of money to buy groceries. Like, seriously, that's where we'll be at. Again, so I don't understand any of this stuff from Justin Trudeau. We're gonna have to go back to work sooner rather than later. Eventually, we're just gonna have to face the fact that, hey, yeah, some more people are gonna die, but we can't risk having a 10-year Great Depression because of it. We can't risk, and again, that'll kill way more people. Having a depression is gonna kill way more people than the 1,000, 2,000 people that are going to die of this, when most of them that are dying are older people that are going to die rather very soon anyway. That doesn't mean I think it's a good thing. It just means I think that I don't think that saving the lives of 1,000 people who are going to die very soon anyway is worth making the entire country suffer for years to come because of that. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. And again, that's something that I think we can agree on. Like, I may disagree with most people on politics, but is that not something we can agree on? Like, to me, that seems like something we should be able to agree on. And again, I want to find common ground with people. Like, I want to find common ground with people, and this should be something that we could find common ground on. Um, so again, that's kind of what I say. And let's see if I can read a little bit about it here. Let's read it here. Normality as it is before or not will come back full on until we get a vaccine for this. That that will be a long way off, the Prime Minister said during his daily news conference. Okay, so he understands that it's a long way off. So again, does he mean that we're going to have to go back to work, but we have to wear masks? We have to, quarantine people that are at risk? I'm not sure exactly what he means by this. And I don't want to go through the entire article here because it may not even really get into anything. And this whole, yeah. Um, I'm not sure exactly what they mean by this, but if that means anything less than going back to work, because the problem with it is that we have to send people back to work, and that means that people should wear masks too. Like, that's something we should do. Stockpile masks, send people back to work. People who are at risk, people who work with, they're around a large number of people. They should just wear masks. That's something that I think Western culture, the one criticism of Western culture that I agree with, and it isn't even really a criticism that the left comes up with, that yeah, we should wear masks, especially during flu season, especially during something like this. It will help. We know masks help prevent the spread of the disease, so that's something we should do. And like I say, my guess is that within a month from now, after May long weekend, barring the amount of cases going up, we should open things back up. Like I say, after May long weekend, I think will be a good time because if you do it before that, people want to get together in big amounts of groups, go camping, do all that kind of stuff. So that's what I would say. And again, I think that's almost exactly a month from now. We give it a month more of this. We should be able to get a very good handle on the spread. By then, it'll be warming up. The virus doesn't, spread nearly as much during when it's warmer. So that'll be something. I think the big thing we're going to have to worry about is is a potential second wave. I think that's the thing we're really going to have to worry about. Um, Coming next winter at some point. So that's something to look out for as well. But again, I don't want to get too much more into this topic because I've talked about enough. So let's talk about the last thing here. This is from Maxime Bernier. He goes on to say we should immediately start to flatten this deficit curve with cuts to all non-essential spending, like foreign and development aid, money to the UN and agencies like CBC, corporate welfare, equalization, etc. And again, this should be something that we can agree on. Like I say, I want to find common ground with people. We're not going to mend this political tension nowadays without finding more common ground. Um, the problem is that we can't agree on this kind of stuff. To me, it absolutely boggles my mind why this isn't a completely nonpartisan issue. That we should cut foreign aid as much as possible. I would say almost all of it. Money to the UN should be completely cut off. Um, like, why is that not a nonpartisan issue? Like, I'd like to hear a good argument why we shouldn't be doing that. And don't tell me, oh, the foreign aid, it helps the poor people. No, there's a lot of evidence that goes to show that foreign aid doesn't help poor people because it completely cripples local economies and that people rely on, rather than, going to the local market to buy their food, they buy their food brought in by, foreign governments. Rather than, spending money locally, they just rely on, the foreign aid whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. So I don't think that that's a partisan issue. The other thing too is that what benefit do we have to give money to the UN? How does it benefit me as a person in Canada, anywhere in Canada, to send money to the UN? Please, can someone give me a good argument to why we should be giving money to the UN? I'd really appreciate that because I can't think of one. It absolutely boggles my mind. The other thing too, CBC's these failing media outlets again. I can't stand how these people on the left they'll always criticize money given to these oil companies, which a lot of it I disagree with. Some of it some of it I agree with, but what they refuse to acknowledge is that if we didn't have such burdensome regulations, oil companies wouldn't need to take as much of this money from the government. And the other thing that they don't understand is that most of these executives and presidents, vice presidents, they're obligated by contract to maximize the amount of money that they can get, which means also money from governments. So they basically have lobbyists to try and get money from governments. So the left likes to pretend that the government isn't at least partially, I would say majority, the problem here, because the left, big government can do no wrong when you're on the left. So they always have to criticize the evil corporations, even though governments have way more powers than corporations do. But yet, according to the left, corporations, we should be more scared about corporations. Corruption and greediness than we should the government, which makes absolutely no sense. Equalization as well. Again, this is all stuff we should be able to do. Like, to me, it just boggles my mind why we can't come together on this kind of stuff and just figure it out. Like, we could save so much money by doing this kind of stuff. Imagine if we took all the money we gave for foreign aid to the UN, to the CBC, all this kind of stuff, and we divided it amongst citizens who need it. Imagine how much money that would be. That money's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars a year. It probably is in the billions. I mean, sorry, it is, because CBC gets over $1 billion a year. So we're talking about how much money would that be for the average working Canadian, or the average Canadian, aged 18 to whatever, 70, 75, whatever you want to make that age cutoff. Um, Imagine how much money that would be. But no, we gotta waste it on the UN and foreign aid. Again, it just absolutely boggles my mind. But anyway, that's about it as far as the video goes today. I'm gonna leave it there. I've talked for quite a while. Um, if you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my BitChute channel. Again, YouTube's going to censor me at some point. They probably already have, considering I'm getting, like I say, close to the amount of views on BitChute as I am on YouTube, with much less subscribers. And it's a much smaller site. So again, check that out, subscribe. There is probably going to be some point in time to where YouTube goes belly up. And again, when that happens, go check out BitChute. And again, if I get banned, go check me out on BitChute. And the last thing too, I do have my email address linked in the description. I do have my PayPal as well, for any donations. I appreciate it, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already.